I was honored and I was flattered, and I was, going down the journey of filming this doc, but it didn't really have an ending. Um, I guess the light at the end of the tunnel during that time around 2017 was that I was sober and I survived a plane crash. But really, I was struggling with ever flying again, uh, struggling with survivor's guilt, struggling with a lot of stuff. And at the time, the directors had mentioned to me, like, can you just look at a plane or act like you're going to go fly in a plane or walk towards a plane? I was like, fuck no, I would never. I can't even consider it. I can't even do it for you for like fantasy purposes for the end of this doc, Um, and I think that set in after a while where I had to acknowledge and and just understand I was afraid to ever fly again, and this thing had huge power over me to the point where it dictated how I got on tour, how many days I'd travel on bus to New York, how many days I'd be on the Queen Mary 2 going to England.
How long would that take?
Oh, dude, so long.
The England one's crazy.
Comfortably on the bus from here to New York, probably 6 or 7 days if you want to stop at hotels. And I toured with my kids, their whole life. So stopping and doing some cool stuff for them, 6, 7 days, and then a 10-day boat ride from New York to the Hamptons.
Fuck.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, my band would leave. They'd be in England in 10 hours, whatever. It would take me 3 weeks. It sucked. And then sometimes I'd be on the Queen Mary 2, and we'd have wild weather, 30-foot waves, 170-mile-per-hour winds. And I was like, is this any better than being on a plane? But
the ocean freaks me out.
yeah,
The
it
big
started
waves
to.
in particular, they freak me out.
Yeah, we got into a couple storms
Ugh.
on one of the transatlantic crossings that, yeah, believe me, like something was festering inside where I had this urge to try to figure out what had this power over me, which was flying. And yeah.
Well, it's totally understandable.
Yeah, I think about it every day after a certain point. And then, plus my kids, they grew up not flying. They grew up associating a plane to a metal container where people die, I think, unfortunately, because that's what happened, to my two best friends and the two pilots who were on my plane. So yeah, it was hard. And then I knew the day I did it, I could show them that they could also do it, and it would probably break the trauma and the spell that my accident caused however many years ago. And yeah, I think after my accident and that whole process, everything people said I couldn't do after that, I would just check them off one by one. Oh, you're not going to run again. Oh, you're not going to play the drums again. Oh, you're not going to do this again. And the one that I gave myself, the restriction I gave myself is I'd never fly again, And I broke it, and I fly again. And
How many years did it take you before you got on a plane again?
20. And I even think back to that. I'm like, 20 years. I lost 20 years with this thing having power over me. But it was like a monster. It kept getting bigger and bigger, and I was like, I gotta.
Well, you got to look at it like in terms of the odds. You survived a plane crash, which is the odds of that are astronomical. The odds of you getting in another plane crash are super low.
Yeah.
I know nobody thinks about it like that because it's the opposite, because you've actually experienced it, so you know what it is. Like, oh my God, this is a real possibility.
Yeah. I can see that now because my son, who's 22, he doesn't love to fly, and I always say, like, we were in Utah, and I took a flight, he ended up driving, and I was like, son, that's way more dangerous. Like, fly with me. I'm never going to put you on a plane that I think is unsafe. I'm so adamant about making sure the pilot's great, the planes had maintenance, whatever else.
How do you check all that stuff?
Well, just if we're flying private, you're able to, like, really make sure it's a great plane. Sometimes even we'll fly on, like, someone's plane that we know. So that makes me feel better. But yeah, he just drove 16 hours round trip. I was like, son, that's way more dangerous.
It is.
But yeah, that's what I tell myself, and I just got to have faith. And yeah.
What was the first plane trip like after 20 years?
It was nothing like I'd imagined it. Uh, I I made a deal with my wife, and I just said, "Hey, if there's ever somewhere we can't go," because she was a champ, man. She was on tour buses with me. She was on whatever, just going kind of close by for trips that we'd go on. And I said, if there's ever a trip that you want us to go on that I need to fly, just don't tell me, and tell me the night before, and let's leave in the morning, and I'm gonna do it. So that's what it was, and the flight was awesome. Had contained none of the awful nightmares that I had fabricated in my head that it would be like over the years. And yeah, I think I just needed a positive experience to cancel out the last bad one that I had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helped a lot. And I think also coming to terms with being so close to my godson, who was my assistant's son, who passed away in my plane crash, and his mom and Che's mom, and just knowing that there was no hard feelings, and the survivor's guilt I was feeling was my own, and to just think about them, and if the roles were reversed, would they want me to really just sit around and not flying again, or have this thing have power over me? Or if I was in their shoes, would I want that for them? Like, of course not.
Yeah, it's an experience that so few people ever have. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like, especially losing your friends, and just the trauma of the actual impact, the whole thing just stuck in your head.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I always, like, my wife's a great flyer. My band, they're all good flying, I think my wife can probably envision a trip, plan a trip, envision how rad it's going to be, how cool it's going to be doing rock climbing or whatever we're going to do. All I can think about until I get there is, like, am I going to make it? Is this going to, I did this once and I almost died. So, I had to just stop that pattern of thinking to the best of my ability. It still happens a little bit, but I still can't. I have trouble booking planes. I have trouble booking flights without thinking of those things,
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, it's awesome that you got through it and got over it and did it publicly so that other people can get inspiration from that.
Yeah.
And just realize, like, hey, maybe for them it was a car accident or a bus accident or whatever it is. Like, you can keep moving.
Yeah, for sure. And I, at the time, AM survived with me, and then he lived for another year and then passed away of a drug overdose. But during that time where, after I'd gotten out of the burn center and did most of my recovery, it was hard to find anyone who had been in a plane crash that was severely burnt, and lost people. There was a lot of groups and a lot of people that like support systems for people who were grieving and lost someone in a plane crash, Yeah. So I was kind of just lonely, trying to navigate, figure it out. Just recently, just like a few days ago, before my doc came out, someone kept tagging me, and I saw it. It's this young lady named Riva. She had a similar experience where she was in a plane crash, 50% of her body was burnt, and she lost her mom in the plane crash. So I was like, this is really similar to me, and I've never met anyone that had even remotely kind of the same experience. So I flew her out, and she was at my premiere, and it was just cool. And I said, it's just as cool for me to meet you as for you to meet me. Like, this is, I don't see anyone or meet anyone like you,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool.
That's a very cool human experience.
Yeah.
Just share it with somebody and realize, like, you both been through something pretty horrible, but you came out on the other side and find comfort in each other.
I think the closest thing that I came to that was right after my accident, and I was out to dinner. The guy who flew the plane and landed in the river. Remember that?
Sully?
Yeah, he came up and shook my hand at dinner. Didn't say a word to me, but I was like,
oh, wow.
Oh, that's awesome,
Yeah, that story's fucking crazy.
Dude, crazy.
But even you, when you were recovering from your burns, you started eating meat.
Well, because I had doctors that were super old school in the hospital with me, that figured out I wasn't eating because they were trying to feed me a bunch of meat, and they stuck a hose down my throat. and that just sucked. So
They stuck a hose down your throat.
to like feed you like that, because I was like secretly just eating kind of like what I wanted, but not eating a bunch of the meat, because I told them, hey, I don't really eat meat. So there was like a miscommunication where they just put a hose down my throat and were feeding me like that. And then during that time, my one of my nurses was super cool, and he started making me bags of beef jerky. So I would eat beef jerky in the hospital to get whatever protein that they wanted me to have, and then down a peanut butter blast smoothie from, what is that? Is it Robux or something like that? Like one of those, and it's 3,000 calories. So I was averaging. I basically had I had a 6,000 to 7,000 calorie diet. I needed to hit every day
Wow.
in order to heal, because I had just had 30 surgeries in 6 months. So it was just trying to get enough.
Just 30 times being anesthetized for 6 months is fucking hard on your body.
Yeah, it was. I was so out of it, I didn't really know until towards the end, you know. But yeah.
Jeez, man. Did you ever try using a hyperbaric chamber?
I couldn't do it after, my best friend that was in the accident with me, AM. He was I think 6% of his body was burnt, and he went in the hyperbaric, and I think he had a small graft on the back of his head. He was out of the hospital in a week and a half, but I had 70% of my body burnt, so there was no way I was getting out of the hospital. No matter how much I did it or didn't do it, I tried doing it, and I was just in such a awful place after my accident, where I had so much trauma with like losing my best friends, and I was definitely my reaction was much different than Adam's, and I couldn't go on the small tube. There was no way. I think at the time it reminded me too much of the inside of the plane.
Really?
Yeah. I just felt really claustrophobic, and I was also having a hell of a time. AM was sober for 15 years when it happened. I was a drug addict, before my plane crash. And you take a person who's self-medicating, put them through 30 surgeries, give them a bunch of pain meds, and they're not working. That was me. So I was waking up every surgery, screaming, swinging on doctors,
Oh,
a
Jesus
complete
Christ.
madman, until they weaned me off. And by the time I got out of there, I never wanted to put anything in my body again, and had a great relationship with all my doctors and Dr. Grossman, who owns the Grossman Burn Center. It was it was full circle.
But that's a crazy trial by fire to get off drugs.
Yeah, that was my rehab.
Wow. Fuck, dude. That has to be, I mean, you're confined to a bed, you're stuck, they're giving you pain medications, you're going through 30 surgeries, you have 70% of your body burnt, your friends just died, and you're in this hospital by yourself.
Huge wake-up call.
What a wild ride your mind must have been going through.
Yeah. It's, I was coming home from a show. I was coming home from a gig, and who would think you get in a plane coming home from a show and you're going to end up in a burn center for 6 months, 4 people are gone and 70% of your body's burnt. It takes a minute to process,
Why did they think you were never going to be able to play the drums again?
Well, there was a point where they were going to amputate my foot because they didn't think they could they had enough skin left to heal my foot or save it. And then because of the amount of burns I had over my body, they weren't positive I was even going to make it. So it was like once they knew I was out of critical condition and I was going to make it, they were, all my nerves were messed up in my hands. Like my ulnar nerve was shot in both hands. My hands were numb. There was a lot of It's just the unknown.